So by the time everyone's listening to this, it will be what, Tuesday evening. So the embargo for Assassin's Creed, is it Shadow or Shadows? Is it
It's
pluralized? I'm actually not
Shadows.
even sure. Okay,
I'm
Shadows.
going with it. I'm pretty
Um,
sure it's Shadows, but I'm.
yeah, I think it's Shadows. The embargo's up, and it's a game.
Wow. Well, thank
It's
you for
one
coming
of
to our
those.
review.
Listen, I'm being facetious. It is an Assassin's Creed. I think um my sort of crib notes thing is like, if you are expecting this to be somewhat different, or a sort of revolution of the formula they penned with like Origins and Odyssey and then Valhalla, I don't think you're going to be super happy with it, because I think it is very much of that vein still, which
Mm.
is good. I mean, set your expectations accordingly. They've said it's going to be their RPG, release,
Mm.
after like Mirage was more not that. Um, and I'm not too opposed to that. I've kind of like, I'm an odd over the whole approach to making these games more role playing centric, and I really enjoyed Origins and didn't really click with Odyssey and really didn't like Valhalla. So
Mm.
maybe the direction the series has gone is just not for me. But
Mm.
even with that in mind, I think Shadows just to me feels like an old game. It doesn't
Mm.
feel like a 2025 game in terms of mechanics and differentiation, especially when a lot of the time I'm playing it and comparing it directly to Ghost of Tsushima, which is what, 2018, 2019 it
Yeah,
came
it's a
out.
good couple of years now.
And I think in many ways, setting aside, of course, you're going to compare the two, but I think in many ways that game mechanically just feels better and
Mm.
acts better, which is just, I think, sad for an Assassin's Creed in a setting that people have been asking for since I think the series debuted almost two
Yeah.
decades ago. So I
I
don't
think
think it's a bad game at all.
no.
I just think it's totally fine. It is not the thing that I think Ubisoft penned a lot of they pinned a lot of hope on this game to kind of get them out of the rut they're in, and you know critical reception and sales can be completely different, but I don't think this is the big like, wow, this is
Mm.
the reinvention that the series needed. At least from my perspective, it's just like, it looks really good, it plays okay, and it kind of just does the same thing, which for a lot of people might be fine, but for me, I was
Mm.
just like maybe expecting a bit more.
Yeah. Look, so I've played a fair bit. I haven't rolled credits because, of course, it's their
So
big
long.
game. It's going to be long. But I have played, I think, about 26, maybe like 28-ish hours, if not 30. Um, and honestly, all I kept thinking is that the biggest sin this game commits is that it exists in the same timeline as Ghost of Tsushima, which is
Mm,
like, it's just an unfair comparison. And the reality is that if you've played Ghost of Tsushima, you are going to keep comparing the two. It's just impossible
mm,
not to. Um, and the fact of the matter is that Ghost of Tsushima was the perfect Assassin's Creed game when it launched 5 years ago. I mean, that is, like you said, that's the one fans wanted. Fans wanted a Japanese Assassin's Creed, and then Sony put out Ghost of Tsushima, and people are like, damn, this is like, it's not Assassin's Creed, but damn, it might as well. It's like it fills that void of what we wanted. So there are going to be those comparisons, and I honestly think if you've played Ghost of Tsushima, you're going to compare the two. It's impossible not to. And if you put them
mm,
side by side like that, Ghost of Tsushima is the better game. That said, it's an unfair comparison because Shadows isn't a 10 out of 10 game to me. It's still really good though. I think it's got its problems, but I'm enjoying it more than I did Mirage and Valhalla. So
mm-hmm.
take from that what you will, and keeping in mind that weirdly Valhalla was my first Assassin's Creed like ever.
Yeah, that's still kind of wild.
Never played anything prior to that. So if it's any kind of fair comparison, Shadows is my favorite out of those. I just think um, it's visually like, I think it's hard to fuck up Japan. Honestly,
Mm,
no, Ghost of Tsushima is gorgeous, but even Shadows, when you're just galloping along, taking in the environments, it is just beautiful to look at. And I think I'll
yeah,
take my hat
agreed.
off to Ubisoft. it just looks good. And it's funny because I try to think like, yeah, Mirage looked good, but it was obviously a lot smaller in scale. You know, it was just like that one big city with the deserts around it. And then Valhalla, I was just like, man, was it just snow everywhere and like drab countryside? I can't remember. Like that just says to me like, well, how forgettable it looked visually. There's also this weird point of, I remember starting it on PS4 and then finishing it on PS5. So there's like this,
oh really?
Yeah,
is that what actually happened?
Yeah, there's this like not mid-generation, it was like on the cusp of the new generation when it launched.
Oh man, that must have been so jarring.
Oh, it was the best, going from PS4 to PS5 to the 30 FPS to the silky smooth and then the fast low times.
Oh, fair. Oh yeah, because you weren't on a PS4 Pro, you were just on the base PS4.
On the base PS4.
Okay, right.
But yeah, so that's getting lost in the weeds there. I think Assassin's Creed Shadows is a slow start. Like it is this, it's this weird thing of, I think people are going to go in thinking like, cool, I'm going to play as Nawe and then like get Yasuke and I can swap between the two like ASAP, and that just is not the reality. You've got to get through the first act, which is about 8 to 12 hours depending on how distracted you get, before you get access to Yasuke as well, the second character. And it's a pain. Like it's just one of those annoying design things. Like it's like, I get why they did it narratively, but yeah, don't expect to go in being like, cool, I'm gonna just play as this dude straight up. But if you,
it reminds me a lot of I know my friend Mick asked like whether it's as obnoxious as Assassin's Creed 3, and obviously you don't have the context for that, but essentially what happened there, and spoilers for a decade-old game now, but you start off the game playing as a character who ends up being the father of the main character that you actually play most of the game for. But you play as him for like 6 to 8 hours, or like somewhere around there, and then only then there's this like big reveal, this big heel turn that he's actually a Templar, and you've been playing as a Templar the whole time, and blah blah blah, and then it like takes you all the way back, and then you're playing as, I think his name's Connor, the protagonist, and then you're kind of like back in the we're training Connor up from like a teenager back to an assassin, and it's like 8 to 10 hours before that game actually starts getting going. And I don't think Shadows is the same, because you're playing as Nawe, and like you're not just doing tutorial stuff for the first act. I do think it is a bit long in the tooth, and like it really takes about 2, 3, maybe even 4 hours to really let you loose on the open world and kind of be like, cool, you can continue on your way. It's very handholdy for the first few hours. So I don't think it's the same, because it is fun immediately from there, but to relegate Yasuke till like 12 hours in is just an insane thing to me, considering you start the game as him for like the first half hour.
I found that very strange, actually. It's because so for context, you the opening 30 minutes, not even like 20 minutes or whatever it is, you play as Yasuke, and you are the strong assassin in this game versus the stealthy one. And that's the tutorial, like this is how you attack, this is combat, blah blah blah. And then gone. You don't see him till like hour 10 or 12. And I just thought that is a weird design choice, because you could have just had him there in terms of like a cinematic, because the events overlap and whatever, but it just felt a bit weird to like let you play as him and then just don't let you touch him for so long. Like I feel if you just not having that at the beginning, just having your tutorial be with Nawe from the get-go would have already been an immediate improvement. It's
also a bit jarring, because like you play the first half an hour as Yasuke, and by design they are very different characters. Like he is, like you said, more of a fighter, far more of a tank, deals a lot more damage, and you're like, cool, I've just done the tutorial with this guy, and then they thrust you in control of Nawe, and you immediately are like, okay, logically I'm a weaker character, I should be a bit more cautious, but they throw you immediately into like combat. You're like, cool, I'm going to parry, I'm going to do this and that, and you just get slaughtered. It's just like, this is not the way to play this, but the very first instinct you've gotten from the game is this is how you play it. It's really weird. I don't understand, like you said, why it's not just a cutscene, or even why it's there at all. Why not just start with Nawe from the get-go? There's nothing narrative-wise that rarely happens in that first half an hour that kind of paints or influences the events of the next 12. You know what I mean?
Okay,
So
yeah.
it's a bizarre way to start.
It's up
me.
for debate, but I don't think it's the right way to start the game. Because then when you do get Yasuke later, it is the same. It's that same almost like power fantasy where you finally get to play as him again. You're like, oh my god, like this guy hits like a truck. Wow. Like you could have just saved that. Although, like if you want to reveal him late, cool, but don't give me a little snippet in the beginning. It just feels a bit weird.
Yeah. It's like getting a taste of an ice cream flavor and then being forced to eat a tub of another one, and then only getting and forced is maybe the wrong word, because it's like, oh, it's not like playing.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
it's like she's actually really cool. She's more of the she's more of the typical assassin's character. Like she is how most of them. So the familiarity is there with her, but yeah, well, do you? So I haven't actually got back to Yasuke because I've just been playing, and I'm like, I think I'm near the end of the first act. For context sake, you are a lot further.
Yeah.
When you get control of Yasuke again, are you then locked into him for a period of time before you can start freely swapping between the two?
You can pretty much swap between the two. And there are certain, like very sparingly, there are certain quests. I say that, I lie. There are certain quests where you have to play as one or the other. But the moment you get him, you can flip between the two. And very often, even on main quests, it'll be like, well, who are you playing as? You want to play as Yasuke or Naoe? And you can choose.
Okay, so they are designed to give you the choice.
There are some where it is like, no, you have to play as this person. For narrative purposes. And that brings me to... So before I get there, let me just say that if I know you said you don't enjoy the Ubisoft formula of the open world, like it's just the way the Assassin's Creed has gone, it's not really your vibe, whatever. However, if you do, I do think you are in for a big, dense world. Like I said, it's gorgeous to look at. There's lots to see and discover. Like it's that typical thing of you'll gallop across the map and there's like a little question mark there and you go to it, it's like, oh cool, there's a tower to climb, or oh, there's this to do, whatever. So there's plenty of that. And if you enjoy that satisfaction of almost like ticking off stuff, like I think you will enjoy Shadows from that point of view. I think it, like I said, to me, it's my favorite Assassin's Creed out of Valhalla and Mirage. So yeah, again, take from that what you will. But yes, there are some, the fact that there's a dual protagonist, not a bad idea. Like I can see why it gives players a choice of you can play as the tankier, harder hitting Yasuke, or if you want the more traditional Assassin's Creed experience, you play as Naoe. But the way it's enacted just baffles me, because it's a matter of you have to, and it's not a long process, but you have to pull open your menu, say you want to swap to the other character, go through a loading screen, and then use the other character. Which is like, okay, that's fine, I could get it. But then the points where you'll go to a character who's going to give you a quest and they won't talk to you if you're the wrong character. They'll go like, oh no,
that's wild.
Like, no, I'll only talk to a samurai, and it says at the bottom, like, you have to be Yasuke for this quest. Okay, but then it's like, I've got to open the menu, swap to him, then talk to the character. But surely, is it not possible to like go to this person and then the prompt is like, push X to talk to this character as Yasuke? You know what I mean? Like to swap to the right character. To me, it's like such a simple thing that will just streamline the experience a little bit more, you know? I mean, that's like a surface level thing. I've had one instance where I was in an enemy fortress, and I don't know if you've played enough to know this, but if you're in an enemy fortress, you can't fast travel out, you can't swap characters because you're in danger. It would be cheating, you know, to like teleport out, whatever. But I've like gone through a whole enemy fortress, gone up the castle. I'm like, oh, there's treasure behind this one wall. And it's a big thing to be moved. It's like you have to be Yasuke to move it. And I was playing as Naoe.
That's silly.
And it's like, you have to be Yasuke to move this thing. I'm like, okay, can I swap to him? No, because you're in a combat area. I'm like, okay, so if I want to desperately get what's behind this thing in this chest, I have to leave the castle, swap, come back in. I was like, come on, guys, that's baffling in 2025 that's the sort of design choice.
That's just a silly thing. Like, again, I think the reason I find issues with the direction the series has gone with regards to the RPG elements is not necessarily those elements. It's just the sort of very artificial feeling padding that they put in. And this sounds like a good example of that, of like, cool, you just did this fortress like mission or whatever, but you should probably come back here again with a different character, and maybe you don't have to fight your way through again, but like you have to come investigate this thing a second time, spend time doing that just to get this thing because we've artificially blocked it from you.
Probably
it just like put that stuff in the open world, not necessarily in confined areas where you are locked into certain characters.
It's just baffling. I mean,
I think also the fact that you have to load out. I mean, again, like you said, it's a small thing because it's a small load screen, but it kind of takes you out of that world where I know we were discussing, it's like GTA 5 solved this problem in 2013.
On the PlayStation 3, and I know it's smoke and mirrors. It's a thing of, actually it's loading, it pulls the camera out, and then, it's the thing of walking through a narrow gap in a game. It's like, it's cinematic, but it's loading. But this is just straight up, go to the menu, load through. And I sat and I thought, I'm like, well, how could this be solved? I mean, I have to believe they tested it, because I can't imagine a whole team of devs not looking at this, or play testers going like, listen guys, this is a pain, and then the dev team going, sorry, our engine just cannot support a quick switch or something. Like, I don't know, that's just me guessing.
Maybe it is something like that, but yeah, I agree with you that I don't think they were looking at this and going, yeah, this is the optimal way to do this. I definitely think, like you said, the whole walking through the gap thing is, we now recognize it as, oh, we're loading between one area to another, but the reason that it works is it keeps you engaged in what you're doing. It keeps you in that world, whereas opening up a menu and forcibly reloading to get to a new character is just like a very very like mechanical way of doing this, and it just, I think, rips you out of whatever immersion you were in.
Yeah,
really.
I mean, my thing is, it's a dumb example, but you can be anywhere in the open world. You'll whistle, your horse will appear. Like, so you can load. There are allies you can recruit that if you infiltrating an enemy camp, you can whistle, do whatever, and they will appear like instantly. So I'm like, cool. No one's worried about that from an immersion point of view, going like, oh, how did the horse get there so quickly? This is game breaking. It's not true to real life. Would it not have been cool or better to be like, I can swap between the two at any moment? It's a JRPG thing of like, you kind of have to close your eyes. Imagine, is your party traveling together? Why are only 3 of them fighting at a time if there's like 10 of you total?
Yeah.
So I'm like, could you
like
not
the
have...
Final Fantasy Rebirth thing of, you see your entire party, but then when you're in combat, it's only your combat party.
So I'm like, could you have not done the smoke and mirrors thing of like, I'm in this enemy fortress, whatever, but then like, I'll whistle, and then off camera, you like literally swap on camera, you like swap characters. As an example of, can you imagine how much more? Because then I think, how cool would that be? You busy infiltrating, sneaky, and then like, actually for this section, I just want to be a powerhouse. I'll just swap quickly,
Yes.
You swap. I don't know. Like, I have to believe they tested this and like, it doesn't work. But I don't actually know. It's such a baffling design choice. And like, I'm not opposed to the dual protagonist thing. Like, I think it's very cool that there is the option. It's just, when I've spent 20 minutes like making my way up to the top of a tower, and there's probably like a dumb wall panel for my base back at home, but I still want it, and it's like, you have to swap to Yasuke to move this heavy object. So I'm like, come on, it's a weird thing in 2025.
Yeah,
it's like such a short-sighted thing in my opinion. But
yeah, and it's not the first time the series has tried this. Like, Assassin's Creed Syndicate had the dual protagonist approach, and it was kind of like the same thing. Like, Evie Fry was more of the stealthy one, and Jacob Fry, I think his name was more like a brawler. I don't think to the extent that Shadows does it. Like, Naoe and Yosuke feel like completely different characters to the point of like, Naoe definitely has abilities that Yasuke can't even do. She can like hide in water, she can crawl through tall grass, which is kind of neat in this game. Like, it's wild that we've had a stealth series this long without like going
that.
prone.
You couldn't go prone in the previous. Okay.
This is like the first time you can do that, which is
wild.
Crazy.
Yeah.
But it's kind of cool. It feels a lot more like a stealth game, like a Metal Gear or a Splinter Cell, or where the stealth actually feels a bit more consequential than just like, oh, if you're in this high grass texture, you are not visible,
Yeah.
and if you're out of it, you are visible. But I think there's some points where it's like detrimental to the experience, where, like you said, if you are Yasuke, you are a tank, you are big, you hit very hard, but it also means you can't really do some cool, fun stuff like parkour or climbing in a manner that feels good, with regards to the series. Whereas Naoe is very nimble, very fast, but can't really hold her own in fights. And so you're incentivized to like move between them in certain scenarios, but the moving between them is so annoying and jarring that I think you end up sticking with one or the other for a lot longer than you maybe should. And that's just to avoid other friction elsewhere, which then pushes you to a different like mechanical friction. So they kind of like work against each other.
Yeah.
I think if it was more seamless to swap between the two, the disparity between the two characters would also be lessened to a degree.
Yeah, I mean, I'm playing Naoe more than Yasuke purely because it's easier to parkour, to climb towers, to sneak, do all of that. I mean, I've got into the rhythm now. And sorry, before I get to that, it's sad because I really like Yasuke. I want to play as him more, but I'm like, it's just not as smooth or seamless or flexible to play as him. Which, like, as you mentioned earlier, I didn't know going to the game. I was like, well, can this guy parkour? You can climb stuff. You can do a lot of stuff. It's just a lot slower. He's a much bigger person, so he seems it's very capable, but it seems a lot clumsier, like climbing walls and like doing parkour and whatever. But then I've just fallen into this rhythm now of I will do all my quests are Naoe, like all the in terms of formula, this game does follow that Assassin's Creed thing of, you've got a whole lot of targets you're trying to kill. And, there are little sub-quests leading to each, big kill, big story beats, whatever. So I play all of those little beats as Naoe. But when it comes to the actual act of like, oh, you're going to kill this target, it's a forced segment where you're like storming a castle. I'm like, oh, well, then obviously I'm going to play as Yasuke. So that's how I've broken up the games. All side and sub quests are Naoe, and then the main actual kill. If I can choose, I'm like, well, then this is where I'll play Yasuke because he's the harder hitting person. So it just feels like it takes away from him as a character as well, which is not fair because I think I like both characters. They both have different motives. They both play differently. They're both like I find them both very likable. Yasuke I think is a very cool character. I'm like dying to know where's he from because I think he must fit into the Assassin's Creed lore somewhere. Like I'm like, which country are you from? Like, where's the link?
Oh, he's from Mozambique.
Oh, is it from Mozambique? Okay, okay. Maybe I didn't know that. I'm sorry, but I wonder. Like, I am waiting to see what the big story payoff is because there is. It's an Assassin's Creed, and Naoe gets. The assassin's blade, and it's like, well, where did that come from? How is it in Japan? Like, I'm sure it's going to be some nonsense anime stuff. I don't know.
Oh, of course, yeah,
but,
of course.
But I'm interested, like, what's happening here? How did it get there?
Yeah, I do think they're both quite interesting characters. I think some of the setup is pretty, not predictable, but just like rote. It's not all too surprising or all too novel. But I think Naoe and Yosuke, from the limited time I've had with him at the beginning, I want to learn more about them. And I think they are really well-realized characters with motives that I want to see play out. More so than I did, was it Eivor in Valhalla? Like, I didn't really get behind them one way or the other. So
Valhalla was a weird premise to begin with. It's like you're a Viking, you're just there to murder people. I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah.
Also, you're an assassin, so you need to be backing us.
How do I sympathize with this person? He's just a straight up murderer. Trying to there were many things wrong with Valhalla that I think I'm having a better time with in Shadows, but not to the degree I wanted to. And I think some of that comes down to as well the combat. So this combat has kind of been, I think, steadily iterated on ever since it was changed to the RPG formula in Origins. Like the R1 is light attack, R2 is heavy attack, and your weapons determine your attack and your damage output, and all of that.
I think here again the game struggles to escape comparisons to Ghost of
Mm.
Tsushima, which again is just, I think it's impossible not to compare the two because people are going to be comparing the two.
Mm.
So from that regard, I think the combat, I think it's totally fine. I think, you've got the same sort of, funnily enough, almost the exact same markers for when you should parry and when you should dodge. The enemy's attack glints red if you need to dodge it, or I think it's like a blue if he's going to do a flurry of like attacks that you can parry and all
parry,
of that.
Yeah.
And then if you parry, like do like a perfect parry or perfect dodge, the enemy like glows yellow to show you that you can do a light attack to do like a quick counter attack, stuff like that. Like it's it's what you expect from a game. I just think while mechanically it makes sense and it looks good, it just doesn't feel right to me. It feels like the camera doesn't know what to do a lot of the time. Like where Ghost of Tsushima worked in a very similar way, I always felt like if I had an enemy that I wasn't locked onto and I wanted to attack in their direction, it kind of knew what I was trying to do a lot of the time. To the point where if someone was attacking me on the side, I could parry them correctly, and Jin would move in a very natural way, or would move how I would expect him to, so I could anticipate attacks afterwards. I don't feel like I've gotten the hang of that here yet, and it feels like if I'm locked onto an enemy, I'm really locked onto them. And parrying someone who's coming from my side or behind me is very, very difficult. And it just doesn't feel good to me. Maybe it's a case of I need to get used to it over time, but it doesn't feel as refined, if that makes sense. It's got all the pieces there to be a good combat system. It just doesn't feel like it needs that little bit of polish to feel like, cool, I'm living that fantasy of chaining together parries and attacks and all of that.
I get you. It's thing I've played enough to know, like I've got the combat more or less down. And you're right, in terms of systems and whatever, like there's nothing wrong with it. Well, there's just something, also I can't quite put my finger on it. It's just something a little bit off about it. Like maybe not even just the parries. Like I get it. I think that's something that comes with time. You start to realize like, oh, if there's someone behind you, like you kind of need to pan the camera around and like just be aware of that sort of thing. But there's almost, again, like there's going to be the comparison. I almost feel Ghost of Tsushima's combat also like flowed a lot smoother. Whereas there's something I just can't put my finger on it. It's something about, clunky is the wrong word. It's not clunky, but there is like something, it's just a bit off about it. It is like maybe a stop-start.
I feel like it's down to the animation.
Maybe it is
the
animation.
doesn't flow naturally between different movements. Yeah.
But yeah, there's nothing wrong with it mechanically. It just doesn't feel as good.
No, I think flow is the exact word I was looking for. It doesn't feel like you are moving between strikes very naturally. There's like an instance, or there's a feeling of like a break in animation, almost. Like I can't say for sure if that's what it is, but that's what it feels like. Like, oh, I've changed direction for the swipe, and it's almost like the character has immediately changed direction, hasn't like naturally flowed into that state. So from a visual perspective, I think it's very slight. But in terms of like feeling and understanding the flow of combat, it just feels off.
No, I know exactly what
I
you
know
mean.
that sounds like very nitpicky, but it just doesn't let you like lock into what you're doing. It just always feels like you're fighting something, and it's very difficult to determine what that is. And again, I think maybe it's something that will be over time, you'll kind of get used to that rhythm, and you've said you've kind of like nailed it. I'm curious though, so now that you feel like you've got a grasp on the combat, has it made it easier to kind of get by big combat encounters with Nawe, or are you changing to Yasuke in terms of needing to put it that way?
I actually wanted to say, you mentioned you earlier when you said Yasuke is like not great at combat. I'm like, no, she's fine. Like Yasuke is better, but she's completely capable. Like I play as her most of the time. You get 2 or 3 different melee weapons per character, and like I found the one I like, busy specking into that in terms of the skill tree, and she's very, very capable. It's a difference between, if you use her sword, it'll take her like 4 or 5 hits, whereas Yasuke's like 2 or 3 hits. He just does a lot more.
So it's
damage.
more just the damage output thing.
It's more just, and also in terms of like, if you want to get into the weeds, Assassin's Creed has, I don't know if it's called like posture, where the enemy like is blocking. You have
Yes.
to hold. So you're right. You get a light attack and a heavy attack, but if you hold either, you almost do like a
Mm.
posture breaking attack.
Yes.
So it feels like Yasuke has to do that a lot less, just because he's more of a powerhouse. I think his default attack just does a lot of like guard breaking, whatever the
Posture
technique.
damage, yeah.
Yeah, whatever
Yeah,
the
it's more like
technical
a
term
guard
is.
meter. It's
Yeah.
like you've got a meter to chip away at before you start actually chipping away at their life. So
But
um,
he's you don't see that. It's not like a bar you can see, but it feels that when you are just, if you just spam an enemy with attacks as nowhere, like they'll just keep blocking unless you do a proper posture
yes.
breaking hold R1 attack.
Um,
Whereas Yasuke, you can just, I feel you can just spam, you'll eventually break through it just because he's a much bigger character.
and that makes sense, like thematically. Like I
Yeah.
don't think there's an issue with that. It's just
No.
it's good that there is that differentiation, but I think if you're coming into this idea of like I can only stealth with Naoe and I can only combat with Yasuke, it's like that's true for one of them. Like Yasuke can't really stealth his way. He can sort of stealth his way, but not really. But Naoe can, at least by what you're saying, can hold her own in a fight. Because at the beginning she's very, very glass cannon. Like she can do damage, but 1 or 2 hits and she's done. Which I don't mind. I mean, I found Ghost of Tsushima played best on its like realistic difficulty, which wasn't necessarily the hardest, but it was like you can die in 1 or 2 hits, but so do enemies. And I really, really loved that feeling because it felt very realistic. This is more numerical and mechanical, but that's fine. That's what this game is. I'm not gonna like slam it for what it's trying to do. Yeah, it's a long game. Like you said, the first act is what, 10 to 12 hours before you even get to Yasuke. Can you get a sense of how big the map is right now? Is it comparable to like a Valhalla or?
I don't know, like pound for pound, which one's bigger or smaller, but the Shadows map is big. It's huge. There's lots to see and do. And I think if I were to equate my playtime, so structurally, you've got, I'm not going to say the number just in case, I don't know, embargo purposes, but you've got X, in terms of main narratives, like you've got X number of targets to work your way through. So I'm like, okay, I've got, from that point of view, I must be, if that is the sort of meter of how long the game is, I must be like 65% of the way through, 65% of the way through. I don't know what happens after that. I'm sure there's story beats that happen after that. And that's taken me like 25 to 30 hours. And that's the first 10 to 15 hours is me engaging with a lot of the side content, just seeing how the game is. And my last 5 to 10 hours have been me beelining to objectives, just to like get to more of the map and to get the story a bit further along before I had this discussion with you. So I don't know, my playtime is I'll probably roll credits, I'm guessing, at like 55, 60 hours.
That seems normal.
Yeah, it seems pretty normal. I think if you're going to really dig into this game, that map is huge. Like there's plenty.
Yeah. I mean, that's been the style of these games for a while. There's a lot of quantity, sometimes at the expense of some quality. I've engaged with some side stuff. It's kind of funny how some of it is quite similar to Ghost of Tsushima in some cases. But there's some cool ones. Like I went to a like lookout point near a shrine, and I thought I was just going to do, like Jin when he composes his haikus, which are really silly but funny at the same time. I thought it was going to be that, but it ended up throwing me into like a whole almost half an hour flashback sequence, which I thought was really cool for content I could have otherwise just missed.
Yeah, also same. I was like, whoa, I could have missed this whole backstory thing happening.
Exactly, and it seems like quite vital almost. So it's cool that side content does have some meat to it. I don't know, based on your experience, does that hold out, or is there a lot of filler stuff which is like, I can pretty much ignore this after seeing it for the first time?
Those quests you spoke about, the flashback ones, I've only encountered a handful of those.
Okay.
And it's wild to me because I'm like, I feel like it's this weird thing where I feel that they are very important to understanding the character, but also I don't know if you should force players to do it. But it's this weird thing of like you can just completely miss it. You can play the game like whatever.
It would have made the opening even longer. So
Yeah,
maybe
that's the thing.
why.
I'm like, well, I don't know if should we have forced people to do that? Nah, like probably not.
Mm.
I do like the way in terms of content, like to answer your question, I think there are the typical side quest things, but I think RPGs in general have come a long way since The Witcher 3, where it is. It's very, very rare, I feel, where today you'll get a quest. It's like, I've lost my 3 chickens. Can you go round them up? You know,
it's a good point.
It feels like a lot of games today have their writing a lot better. And I think Assassin's Creed Shadows. Yeah?
No, I was going to say, unless you Final Fantasy Rebirth, in which that is part and parcel of some of those.
Go fetch this lost cat. Yeah, sorry.
I think there actually were chickens in, what was it? Gongara, the little forest.
Oh, you're right. Okay.
Yeah.
Ignore me.
It reminded me.
You do get nonsense like that. I think it is the thing of like the quests are fun. I can't tell you, it's not, I think it's just mentioning The Witcher. The Witcher 3 was very good in that. You know, you're walking along the road and, there's someone whose wheel has come off their cart and you talk to them. You're like, this is going to be some dumb quest. And then an hour later, like, oh my God, I've uncovered a plot to like murder the mayor of the town. You know, that's the level of writing in The Witcher, which I think set the benchmark. I don't think Assassin's Creed Shadows hits those highs, but it's not, I can't tell you the quests have been like boring. I quite like actually, it's a very Assassin's Creed thing where it's not a typical quest menu. It's like, here your main quest and here's your side quest. It's this huge board where it's like, these are the characters you've met, and it like plots them. It's like, cool, here are the targets you're trying to kill, and here are the quests linked to them, you know, like, and it doesn't tell you outright you have to go there. It gives you a hint. It's like, cool, if you want to start this quest, you got to go like to this area on the map, and then they are south of this temple. You know, you kind of have
I quite like that aspect.
Yeah, it doesn't like spoon feed you. But that quest board is full, like where I am now, like I can pull my map back. It's like, cool, there's one section's like, these are people I've met. It's like allies. It's like, cool, there's the quest linked to them. Oh, there's tons of these other sub-circles like, oh, there's this group and this group and this group, which are also all targets you can engage with if you want to. So from that point of view, it feels, I mean, I throw the word organic around a lot because it feels like it's natural. Like, you know, this is how a real life thing would unfold if this game was in real life. It's not just like a bar the numbers, let me pull open my quest board and go to the spot on the map, whatever. So I like how that's structured. I think it's very cool. In terms of the quality, I can't tell you it's like memorable stuff like The Witcher, but it's not bad stuff either. I don't know if that answers your question. But
no, I'm glad to hear that, because I think a lot of it over time, I think Origins got away with this because it was like fundamentally a much shorter experience than what Odyssey ended up being. And I think partly why I couldn't get into Odyssey was just like from the get-go, just felt like it was bombarding you with a lot of things that I thought a lot of it wasn't that interesting. And I found a lot of the same in Valhalla. It's why I like dropped off of it very quickly. And obviously you do not need to engage with these things. You can mainline it. I don't think Assassin's Creed has ever been an RPG where it's like, well, if you just do the main story, you're not going to be high enough level to actually continue taking on everything. It's like fairly liberal in letting you just follow the main quest.
I wonder though, because
you want to say no.
No. I wonder though, because I've managed to keep my level up to wherever I need to be for whichever target I'm aiming for. But I have engaged with some side contents, and not even just side quests. Like me running along the map, I fall into that trap of like, oh, there's a question mark there. Let me just have a look there, and like, oh, okay, now hang on, there's another question mark there, and I get very distracted in like ticking off things, you know. And in doing that, I'm getting experience and leveling up. I'm not necessarily doing quests, but I'm, you know, I'm clearing an enemy fortress and getting experience from that. I do wonder if you were to follow the critical path, if it feeds you enough XP to just, you know, keep meeting the minimum requirements. I don't know. But I do
because I definitely saw it doesn't scale automatically with you. There are like areas, I think from the get-go you could see on the map where it's like level whatever area. I know, because that's how it kind of like guides you through which targets to go for in what order. So maybe there's that aspect. It is good to hear though that you are still like tempted to go investigate some of the question marks, as opposed to, I think if the side content was very quickly like bad, you'd be like, well, I'm just going to ignore these things. I'm just going to go, I'm not even going to investigate them.
That might just be a me thing. I'm like, oof. I'm like that question mark's 100 meters away. Like, might as well get it, might as well go see what's going on over there. But just quickly on the level thing, you're right, the map is broken up into like, this area you should be level 10 and this area is level 25, whatever. But you'll find that if I've over leveled, for example, if I'm like level 20 now, and actually the quest I'm doing was level 15 when I started the game, the minimum level always matches what your current level is. If that makes
that's
sense.
kind of cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you'll never, like, for better or for worse, you'll never walk into an area and be like, I'm level 30 and this enemy is level 10. That enemy will always be level 30. It'll always be match. But on the flip side, you can't walk into an area of level 40 and expect the enemy's going to be level 40 and you'll get one hit.
I quite like that. It's like reverse scaling in a sense. It's constantly keeping the combat interesting, but also gating off certain areas to make you feel like you need to upgrade. I think that's quite smart.
I think that's quite a clever thing, yeah.
Yeah, a lot of RPGs like don't do that. They choose one or the other, and for a lot of them, it is quite nice sometimes to roll up to an area like in Elden Ring. You start off very, very weak. You're in Limgrave and you're just kind of like struggling through there. And if you come back to that in like 30, 40 hours in, you are just like rolling over people, which is it's fun in its own right because it shows your progression. But I think in a game like Assassin's Creed, that would feel firstly quite strange given its setting and its characters. And I think it would make pretty straightforward combat even more straightforward. So I'm kind of glad that they don't do that. It's quite
also
smart.
I mean, it's an RPG in that you've got gear, like you've got a headpiece and armor piece. I was thinking about, I can't for the life of me remember if this was the case in Valhalla and Mirage, but I unlocked a legendary piece of gear pretty early, and it's got such a good perk where it's like there's a 3% chance to remove 1 bar of health from an enemy, which means you can sometimes one hit just a low level enemy and they'll just die. I'm like, this is great. I hope I can take this armor with me for most of the game. And you can. There's a system where any piece of armor you pick up, you can just keep leveling it. It costs resources, obviously, but if I picked up this armor at level 5 and I'm level 12 now, I can go to my blacksmith at my home base and pay money to just scale it up to level 12, which is nice. Like, because I did think like, oh my god, like, am I gonna have to keep? Like, I've worked really hard to climb this castle and get this legendary piece of gear, but it's level 20 because I'm level 20. It's gonna be useless in a few levels. There's thought behind that. Like, no, if you want to keep it, you just pay to like keep it your level, which is I like that. I like stuff like that.
That also means that's cool.
It also means people like me who like typically I'll play a game. It is this thing of I'll spend a lot of time exploring the side content at the beginning, but as I get towards the end, I'm like, I just want to beeline towards the end. I don't have to worry of now I need to do side content to keep my gear up to scratch. Like, now I can just pay my way to, not with real money, with in-game money, I can just pay my way to keeping that gear relevant.
And you don't feel that resource cost is like quite exorbitant?
It's never been a problem for me.
Okay.
And the thing is, it's weird stuff. As you know, if you want to upgrade armor, there's like a material resource. If you want to upgrade weapons, it's like I can't remember what it is, but it's like, it's not this, but say ore, If you do run out, there are vendors on the map that sell those things as well. So as long as you have money, like, you're not locked out of these, out of upgrading your gear. But it hasn't been a problem for me. Like, I've never gone like, oh, I need to go farm this resource to get whatever.
Let's talk about resources quickly, because there's a facet of the game that I've only very briefly brushed up against, but I was immediately like, I don't want to do this anymore. And that's your hideout.
Baseball.
So okay, firstly, this hideout's strange because it kind of exists outside of the open world. Like, you can go to it, it is on the map, but you load in and out of it, which I find very odd when the rest of the world is like one contiguous like area that you can explore. And I guess the reason for that is that you can edit it to your liking. Basically, you find resources and then you spend those resources to open new wings of your your hideout, and you can structure it like a base builder, essentially. Like, where do you connect this house? How does it connect to your greater base? How do you how do you make the space look and feel? You can find decorations and chests and really customize it, like really get all fucking Animal Crossing on it, if you really want to.
100%.
I obviously engage with it because it's part of the like early tutorial. You have to unlock a portion of it to unlock scouts, which you can send on like reconnaissance missions to get you more detailed locations of targets, put it that way, which I think is a pretty cool mechanic. I asked you at the time, I'm like, do I have to keep doing this stuff? Because I just find having to find resources and plop a base down and keep coming back to the space, like, just not something that I want to do in a game like Assassin's Creed. It reminds me a lot of the tower defense stuff in the Assassin's Creed 2 days, which was also just like superfluous fluff over, the stuff that you want to do. And you said that you don't really need to engage with it. What does that mean?
No, so I think in terms of, it's not this thing of, oh, you're going to get locked out of content unless you're not going to be able to play the game unless you go back and you scale up your base. The stuff at your base just complements what you're doing out in the world. And I guess with rare exception of, you probably should build one or two things. So as an example, you can build a blacksmith at your base, and it's in your best interest to level that up, purely because then it lets you do what I said earlier, level up your gear to a certain level. So then when you build it from scratch, you can level up gear to level 20. Then when you upgrade it, you can level up gear to level 40, as long as you are that level. But I mean, other than that, and maybe the scout building where, that upgrading that gives you access to more scouts to go out and do things. Other than those two buildings, like there are others you can build, obviously. I don't think there's any that are like essential that you're going to lose sleep over if you don't build. There's a lot of cosmetic stuff. I think if you want to engage with it from that point of view, you can. Like, it's pretty cool if you want to have your own proper little assassin's base with the Japanese aesthetic. There are a lot of buildings to choose from, and it is a thing of like, you pull the map out, there's a whole grid that you can just plonk down buildings. You can put down a whole lot of animals that you encounter in the real world. It's like, I see a cat, I pet it out in the real world, now I can adopt it and put it back in my base. So that's
10 out of 10.
Yeah, 10 out of 10. But I'd say like, you can't really ignore it, but you don't have to put too much time into it. Honestly, if you're just playing the game, looting stuff as you go, you'll have enough resources to level up what you have at your base. I mean, you load in.
I still think it's a strange, I don't know. It's, again, I keep coming back to this idea of, there is a lot of stuff put in these games that just, I think, is pretty needless. There is a sense of more for more's sake a lot of the time. And I just think if a lot of the stuff was cut back and refined, and, this was something that people praised Avowed for. I mean, I know I fall on the lower end of the praise for that game, but I do agree with the idea of, it took larger open world RPG formulas like a Skyrim or something and really cut out the fat, cut out the stuff that people don't actually enjoy doing, and focus a lot more time on the stuff you do want to do 80% of the time. And I think Assassin's Creed as a series could benefit from a bit more of a look in that direction. And Shadows kind of commits the same crimes, not, I think, to the same degree, but I think it could benefit from that refinement.
Look,
that's just my thinking.
To your points, 100% they could have said, here's your base. You don't have to, it doesn't have a building aspect, but here's your base, and you can watch it get stronger as you play the game. You know what I mean? Like, narratively, you've got a blacksmith now. You play the game, you've part of your one quest, you've now got resources to upgrade your blacksmith. It could have made it feel more like that, as opposed to what it is now. It's just busy work of, I've got to go back to base, upgrade this thing. But again, like, I get your concern, but it's not as egregious as you think it is. I don't think, at least not from my point of view. It's one of the things like, like I can literally go back to my base, I can just plonk down this new building, takes 2 seconds, go back to my adventure.
Yeah. Yeah, I kind of like the idea of if it was something that you just come back to and see progress over time. Like, again, Elden Ring does that. A lot of the Dark Souls games did that, where it's like you find a character in the world that now
They
returns
just
to your
pop up
base. You
back,
can go
yeah.
back and talk to them. They're
No,
now a
for sure.
merchant there or something.
That would
Yeah.
have been a choice, and it could have 100% worked. But
Yeah.
yeah. Oh, one thing I do want to touch on, sorry, before we do, because I think we are going to wrap this up soon. I did touch on visuals earlier. I haven't really mentioned the season system of the game. Have you? Do you know what the season system is?
I definitely know that the seasons change, because I think it was like a pop-up at the base again, where it's like the look and feel of this place will change depending on the season. So I'm like, okay, they'll transition between them. Is it a thing that happens quite regularly, or
so I don't know what the trigger is to, make a season move along, whatever. In terms of gameplay, it doesn't change. It's not like, let me just pull back. So the game has all the seasons, spring, summer, autumn, winter. I can't tell you that, certain things happen in winter or spring or autumn, whatever. But visually, the way the game changes between seasons, what happens is, I don't know if it's every couple hours or when you've done a certain amount of quests, whatever, but the season will change. And what happens is everything on the map kind of like resets. Like you get all your scouts back, there are new resources to plunder, etc. What I want to get at though is that visually, it is gorgeous, like what they've done. How you can be in one area in spring and go back, and it's there's like there's the cherry blossoms, and it's just visually like looks good. Then you hard cuts to autumn, where everything's that beautiful red and yellow. All the trees are you get up into one of your towers to synchronize, and you just survey the land like, damn, this looks good. And then hard cut to winter, where the same thing, everything's just covered in white. They nailed that. I think a lot of effort went into that. And it's funny because I think it's just a visual thing, but man, it looks, it's really, really cool how you can be in one city through all the seasons, and it just looks and feels different. So I take my hats off to them for that, because I think that's worth definitely pointing out. Like it's unfair, because Ghost of Tsushima is this visual masterpiece, and Assassin's Creed also looks really fucking good. Doesn't look as good as Ghost of Tsushima, but I do want to just shout out that, like, damn, that season system, really, really stunning. I love it.
Yeah, I think from a technical aspect, Assassin's Creed is obviously leagues ahead of Ghost of Tsushima. I think it does look really good. At first, I was a bit taken aback with how maybe realistic it aimed for, as opposed to stylistic, if that makes sense. But I think from that perspective, it looks really good. And I think, like you said, the setting really lends itself to really bright highlights and, soft, like, hues of pink and red. And I do think it looks good, even without having seen the season changes. Ghost of Tsushima, I think, just has, from an artistic standpoint, a bit of a lead in terms of it just knows what things to spruce up a bit more to give it more of a like artistic feel. I mean, there's a lot of stuff in Ghost of Tsushima that's not accurate, but like when you're riding through those fields of reeds, and they're like bright yellow with like white tips, and the horizon is like this like bright green. It's sort of like a Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild moment versus a Witcher. They both look very, very good, but for different reasons. So yeah, I think Shadows looks really good. It's definitely by far the best looking Assassin's Creed game, and I think it's really, really a big improvement over Valhalla, which, like you said, was very drab by comparison. So yeah, I'm curious to see if this is all new tech, especially the season stuff, like how it's applied to future games, because I do think this is a new step in like what these games look like. It's really good, and it runs pretty well on. I mean, we both just have base PS5s. It sounds so like plebeian, but we don't have those pro models. But I'm playing on the like balanced mode, which is like the 40 FPS mode. I think it feels good. It looks really good. The only sort of issue I've had is when entering the base. I think we both had this issue. It must be a bug of some sort. Yeah, the frame just.
I don't think it's a bug so much as
plummets. It's
I think
weird.
That area has not being up. Maybe it's not being. It's not unoptimized necessarily, but maybe just because it is open nature and that the player can like plonk buildings down There's something about
Maybe,
that
yeah.
that tanks the FPS. But yeah, other than that, I mean, I've been flip-flopping between the quality 40 FPS and just the straight up performance. And I found the 60 FPS actually looks really good still as well. It's weird
Okay.
because I've played, I mean, Monster Hunter is a good example of you flip to performance
Yeah,
and
I
you're like,
know,
oh my
bad.
God, like somebody smeared Vaseline on my screen. It's
I mean,
just,
even the performance mode there is like, it feels good. It doesn't look
it
great,
doesn't look great. And then even a good example is Horizon Forbidden West. You can put on performance mode and it runs smooth, but you can tell like, oh, the resolution just doesn't look crisp. Like something's happened here. It's being upscaled or something. Whereas Shadows, I can put on performance mode. I'm like, yeah, it still looks really good. I can't tell you
That's good to know.
I've
Yeah.
noticed anything glaring. And I've been I flip between my playing on my PC monitor 40 FPS and the TV when it's available to 60 FPS. And I'm like, it still looks good at 60 FPS. So, yeah.
I normally just immediately gravitate towards 40 FPS modes nowadays, and I haven't really tried the others purely because I hate that you have to reload the game when you change visual settings. I do not understand how we got through like 4 or 5 years of this not being an issue, and now
It's back.
Avowed did the same. Avowed was even worse. Avowed like logged you out of the game. It was bad.
Really? I know.
Yeah, no, it was like, it's going to take you back to the title screen. It's like, what the fuck are you talking about? This one is like not as egregious. You have to reload a checkpoint, but like, for the longest time, games like changed in the background. Like the menu was sometimes transparent, so you could see changes taking effect in real time. Why are we suddenly like regressing to this? I'd like to be able to swap between them at will so I can see the differences very quickly. If I have to load in and out, it's just annoying.
Yeah.
Again, not a huge thing because you'll likely find one mode that is the best for you and stick to that.
Just
but
stick to it,
even on the Pro, this is an issue because you still have like, I think, 2 modes on the Pro. You have like a higher quality mode and then the performance mode. So it's just weird. It's fine. But at least the modes seem to function really well. I think it performance wise, it's very good.
Yeah, visually cannot fault this game. Looks great.
No, it's very good. Very good character rendering. I think the faces look really good, especially in cutscenes. They emote very well, and there's a lot of detail. It's really cool.
Yeah, I think just in closing, I know we've probably come across as very harsh in the game, which is fine. There's criticism. I think generally, though, I am enjoying my time with it. I am going to roll credits on it because I am enjoying being in this world and ticking off. It is this part of my brain where I put it in the same camp as people who play Power Wash Simulator, where I'm like, I can't tell you that power washing anything's going to be fun, but it's a thing of there's a little ting that happens when you clean a surface. Like, oh, that's just satisfying. I have that with these sort of open world games where I'm not going to tick everything on the map, but I get a good sense of satisfaction of like, I can see all my targets and I'm just like crossing them off as I'm playing through the game. So yeah, I'm definitely going to keep playing and see. I want to see where the story goes as well. Where does it tie in with this animist nonsense? We'll see. I guess.
Yeah, that's an aspect of these games that I just have completely checked out of over the years. I think that stuff is gone so far off the deep end. I just like, cool, whatever. I know it's in the background. I don't focus on it. I focus more on the period story, if that makes sense. The animist bullshit in the background, whatever. Templars, Abstergo, who cares?
Mild.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think it's it's more a personal thing. I think I just haven't vibed with these games in a long time. I think I really enjoyed Origins, and since then, I think I've been looking for something similar to that. And I think that one was the first in this lineage, and the first one that kind of still respected, I think, a bit of the player's time and was going for a bit less quantity overall. I think it's the same argument that I've had with like Final Fantasy VII Remake versus Rebirth. I think the sequels have just overblown things for the sake of it, or in an attempt to try and make them feel bigger, and I don't think they've really hit the mark. I think Shadows is better than Valhalla for sure. Like Valhalla, I think, was the complete extreme end of that. And I think a lot of that has to do with the characters and the setting, and I'm going to keep playing this. I think I'm still having a good enough time. I just... Yeah, maybe my expectations were like, this is the one that's really going to change things, and it's just more of what I think a lot of people should just base their expectations on, the past. It's a refinement of that. It's not a reinvention of that, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Cool. It's Assassin's
That's
Creed
Assassin's Creed Shadows. Yeah.
It is plural.
It's
I looked
out.
it up.
It's what? Sorry?
It is plural. It's Shadows.
Oh, it's Shadows. Shadows. I think it's out next week, Friday, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, this episode's going up on the 18th. Let's see.
So it'll be, what, like the 20th, 21st-ish?
It is out on March 20th, so that's the Thursday.
Thursday,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. So, yeah, people get to play that fairly soon. I think, a lot of people have been waiting considering the delays that it's gone through. I suspect people are going to enjoy this game. I do not suspect that this is going to be the thing that pulls Ubisoft out of its financial woes. I don't think this is going to be like a outlandishly good seller, considering that the series itself has waned a little bit in terms of that since Valhalla. So we'll see. But yeah, it's good. It's got a cool setting, got cool characters, but it is still Assassin's Creed fundamentally. So yeah, that's either good or bad to you. It really depends on you.